In a quiet corner of Africa, where the land stretched wide and endless, and the tall grass whispered with the breath of the wind, there was a village small but full of life. The huts were round, built of clay and straw, with doors so low that one had to bow to enter. Chickens scratched in the dust, goats bleated in the shade, and the voices of children echoed through the air like songs of joy. It was here that two brothers lived. The elder, Kofi, carried the strength and seriousness of his father. His shoulders were broad, his step steady, and his eyes looked far ahead, as if measuring the dangers of tomorrow. He spoke little, but when he did, his words held weight, and people listened. The younger, Jabari, was the opposite. His laughter was like water flowing over stones. His eyes were gentle, and his heart quick to soften. He helped old women carry firewood, lifted crying children into his arms, and was known for sharing even when he had little. The brothers were bound by blood and love, though they differed in spirit as night differs from day. The land around the village was both generous and harsh. The rains came, filling the rivers and painting the earth green, and the people danced and sang. Then the dry season followed, the sun burning the soil until cracks spread across the earth. Life in the village was a circle of endurance and joy, of patience and celebration. Through all of this, Kofi and Jabari worked side by side. They tilled the fields, hunted small game, and listened to the elders tell stories around the fire. One morning, when the air was still cool and the sun was only beginning to climb, Kofi said to Jabari, "Brother, the harvest is stored. The goats are fat. Let us prove ourselves once more. Let us go to the deep forest and hunt. Not near the river, not near the plains, but into the heart of the wilderness where true hunters walk." Jabari looked up from mending a net and smiled. "The forest is wide and filled with spirits. But yes, let us go. My heart has been calling me there." Their mother heard and came to them. Her hair was streaked with gray, her hands worn from years of grinding maize and weaving baskets. She placed her hand on their shoulders and said, "My sons, the forest gives life, but it also takes. Walk with care. Remember, strength is not always in the spear. Sometimes, it is in mercy." Kofi nodded out of respect, though in his heart he believed strength lay in caution and discipline. Jabari kissed his mother's hand, his eyes warm, and said, "Your words are always in my heart, mother." They prepared for their journey. Kofi sharpened the iron tips of their spears until they gleamed in the sun. He tied a knife at his waist and carried a skin of water. Jabari packed dried meat wrapped in banana leaves and tied sandals of tough hide to his feet. When the rooster crowed a second time, they were ready. The villagers watched them go, their mother whispering a prayer to the spirits of the ancestors, asking for protection. The forest was far, but their feet knew the land. They crossed fields where children waved at them, they passed thorn bushes and termite mounds that stood like towers, and soon the trees grew thick, swallowing the sky above them. Here, the air was cooler, heavy with the smell of damp earth and leaves. Birds called from the branches, monkeys chattered, and unseen creatures rustled in the undergrowth. For hours they walked, eyes searching for signs of prey. They saw the tracks of antelope, light and quick, but the wind carried the hunter's scent, and the antelope fled before they could get close. They saw the droppings of buffalo, fresh and steaming, but the herd was far away. Kofi pressed forward with determination, his eyes sharp. Jabari followed, sometimes stopping to marvel at a butterfly or to listen to the strange cry of a bird he had never heard before. Then, as the sun rose high, they heard it. A sound unlike any they had heard that day. A cry. Thin, high-pitched, desperate. It cut through the air and sank into their hearts. The brothers froze. They listened. The sound came again, from deeper in the trees. They followed carefully, their spears ready. The cry grew louder as they pushed through bushes and ducked under branches. At last, they came to a small clearing. And there, trapped in a crude cage made of sticks bound with vines, was a lion cub. Its fur was golden but dirty, its body thin, its paw caught between the sticks. It had struggled so much that the wood had scraped its skin, leaving small streaks of blood. Its eyes were wide, full of fear, and its cries rose into the air like the wail of an abandoned child. Kofi's face hardened at once. He pulled Jabari back. "We must leave. Now. Where there is a cub, the mother cannot be far. If she returns and finds us here, we will not leave alive." Jabari's heart ached as he looked at the small creature. "But brother," he whispered, "it is just a baby. Look at its paw. Look at its eyes. It suffers." "That is not our concern," Kofi snapped. "It is a lion. Today it is small. Tomorrow it will be grown and will hunt the goats of our people. This is the way of nature. Let us not interfere." But Jabari shook his head slowly. "No, Kofi. Nature may be harsh, but must our hearts be the same? If we turn our backs on suffering, even the suffering of a lion, what kind of men are we?" Kofi gripped his brother's arm tightly. "Do not be foolish. Mercy for a lion is death for us. Think of mother. Think of our family." Jabari met his brother's eyes. His voice was calm but firm. "If I must die for showing mercy, then so be it. I will not let a child of the forest cry in pain while I have strength to help." With that, he pulled free from Kofi's grip and stepped toward the cage. The cub growled weakly, baring its tiny teeth, but its voice trembled. Jabari knelt, moving slowly, his hand steady. He used the end of his spear to push at the sticks. The wood was strong, bound tight, but he pressed and twisted. Sweat rolled down his face as the sticks groaned and bent. At last, one snapped. Then another. He widened the gap, and the cub, with a final desperate pull, slipped free. The cub stumbled, its paw bleeding, its body shaking. It stared at Jabari for a long moment, its golden eyes wide. In that gaze, something passed between them, a spark of understanding. Then, without a sound, the cub turned and ran into the tall grass, vanishing like a shadow. Kofi let out the breath he had been holding. His voice was harsh but trembling. "You are mad, Jabari. Mad. You risked both our lives for a beast." Jabari stood, wiping the sweat from his brow. His eyes followed the grass where the cub had vanished. "Perhaps I am mad," he said softly. "But my heart is at peace." The brothers left the forest that day with no game, their stomachs empty but their minds full. Kofi walked in silence, anger and fear in his chest. Jabari walked quietly too, but his steps were lighter, as if he carried not a burden but a secret gift. When they returned to the village, their mother saw them and asked what they had hunted. Kofi said little, but Jabari told her of the cub. She looked at him with eyes full of both worry and pride. "My son," she said, "the world is a circle. What you give will return to you. Remember this." Years passed, as years always do. 10 seasons of rain and 10 seasons of sun. The brothers grew into men. Kofi became known in the village as a wise and steady man, trusted in counsel, respected in the fields. Jabari became beloved by all, known for his generosity, for his smile, for his willingness to help at any hour. They married, built huts of their own, and raised children. Life was full of hardship but also joy, and the forest became a place they visited less often, for they had responsibilities now. Yet the forest remembered. One year, after a plentiful harvest, the men of the village spoke of going deep into the wilderness to hunt larger game. Kofi and Jabari decided to go together, as they had done long ago. They sharpened their spears, packed food and water, and set out early in the morning. Their children watched them go, wide-eyed, dreaming of the day they would be old enough to join. The forest greeted them as before, with its buzzing insects, its cries of birds, its heavy air. They walked far, tracking signs of animals, speaking little. The sun moved slowly across the sky, and shadows lengthened. They found themselves deeper than they had ever gone, the silence of the forest pressing on them like a weight. Then came the sound. A low growl. Then another. The grass rustled, and lions emerged. One, then two, then more, until the brothers were surrounded. Their golden eyes glowed, their muscles tense, their tails flicking. Death circled them. Kofi raised his spear. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. "Brother, we must fight, though we will not survive." Jabari gripped his spear, but his eyes scanned the pride. Among them, one lion stepped forward. It was huge, its mane dark and thick, its eyes golden and fierce. It walked closer, its gaze fixed on Jabari. The other lions growled, ready to leap, but the great lion let out a roar. The sound shook the ground. The lions froze. The great lion roared again, louder, commanding, and the lions began to retreat, one by one, into the grass. Only the great lion remained. It stood tall, looking at Jabari. In its eyes was recognition. 10 years had passed, but those eyes were the same that had stared at him from behind sticks. Jabari's breath caught. His heart whispered, "It is him." The lion held his gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, it turned and walked away, disappearing into the tall grass. Kofi's voice broke the silence. "You saved us, brother. 10 years ago, when you freed that cub, you saved us today." Jabari's eyes were wet as he whispered, "Kindness never dies, Kofi. It always returns, even from the heart of a lion." They walked back to the village in silence, carrying no game but carrying a story. When they told it, the people listened in awe. The children's eyes grew wide, and the elders nodded knowingly. The story spread, carried by voices and by wind, until it became a truth of the village, that no act of kindness is wasted, that mercy echoes across time, and that even the fiercest of hearts remembers. And so the tale was told for generations, by firelight, under the stars, a reminder that strength lies not only in the spear but in the heart that chooses compassion. The village lived in cycles, like the drumbeats of time itself. The people rose with the sun, worked in the fields, gathered by the river, and ended their days with songs under the night sky. Yet, life was never simple, for each season brought its own trials. Some years the rains were too heavy, washing away the crops. Other years the sky withheld its blessings, and the ground cracked like broken pottery. Through it all, Kofi and Jabari lived side by side, their paths different but their bond unbroken. Kofi became known as a leader among men. When disputes rose over land, he was called to settle them, for his words were firm and just. When the warriors of another tribe raided their goats, Kofi stood at the front, spear in hand, his presence commanding. People whispered that he carried the strength of his ancestors in his blood. He built a hut larger than most, with a roof that did not leak even in the strongest rains, and his wife bore him sons who carried his sharp eyes and daughters who carried his quiet dignity. Jabari, though, became the heart of the village. He was not the loudest or the strongest, but wherever he walked, joy seemed to follow. When old men sat hungry because their children had moved away, Jabari shared food from his store without being asked. When children fought, he knelt beside them, his gentle words turning their anger into laughter. He carved toys from wood, sang songs he made up on the spot, and told stories that made the nights brighter. His hut was smaller than Kofi's, his possessions fewer, yet his home was always full of people, for everyone felt welcome there. Despite their differences, the brothers respected one another deeply. Kofi often shook his head at Jabari's softness, warning him that too much generosity could leave one empty. Jabari would smile in return, saying, "A vessel that pours kindness is never truly empty, for it fills again in ways unseen." One year, a great drought struck the land. The river shrank into a thin trickle, the crops withered, and hunger gnawed at every belly. The goats grew thin, their ribs showing, and even the birds seemed fewer. The elders gathered beneath the great baobab tree to decide what should be done. Some argued for sending hunters farther than ever before, into forests and plains no man had walked in a generation. Others urged patience, praying the rains would come. It was during this time that the story of the lion returned to the thoughts of both brothers. Kofi could not forget the day they had been surrounded, nor the great lion's eyes when it spared them. He found himself restless at night, wondering if that creature still roamed the forest. Jabari thought often of the cub he had freed long ago. He sometimes dreamed of its eyes, golden and bright, and in those dreams, he felt both wonder and peace. When the drought worsened, Kofi said to Jabari, "Brother, we must go once more into the wilderness. Not just for the hunt, but for hope. If we return with food, our people will endure. If we fail, at least we will know we tried." Jabari nodded. His heart was not for the hunt, but he could not refuse his brother, for he too felt the weight of their people's suffering. So once more, they sharpened their spears, packed what little dried food they had, and set out at dawn. This time, their journey was harder. The sun was cruel, the earth hot beneath their sandals. They passed cracked fields, the air trembling with heat. The trees in the forest seemed thinner, their leaves dry and brittle. Animals were scarce, for even they had fled in search of water. For days, the brothers walked, following tracks that led nowhere, drinking sparingly from their skins, their stomachs empty. One evening, as the sky burned red with sunset, they camped near a dry stream. The silence was heavy. Jabari looked at his brother and said, "Kofi, do you ever think of the lion?" Kofi's jaw tightened. "Every day," he admitted. "But I do not know if it was mercy or chance that saved us. Perhaps the spirits guided that beast. Or perhaps it was nothing but luck." Jabari shook his head softly. "No, Kofi. It was not luck, that cub remembered. Even a beast remembers kindness. What we give, returns." Kofi said nothing more, but the thought lingered in his heart. The next morning, before the sun rose, they woke to a sound. Not the cry of birds, not the rustle of wind, but the deep, resonant roar of a lion. It rolled across the trees like thunder. The brothers froze, their eyes meeting. The sound came again, closer this time. They rose, spears ready, but what they saw made them lower their weapons in awe. Out of the forest walked the lion. Not just any lion, but the same great lion they had seen years ago. Its mane was darker now, streaked with gray, its body scarred from battles, but its eyes shone with the same golden fire. Behind it, younger lions followed, but they kept their distance, watching silently. The lion approached slowly, its massive paws silent on the dry earth. It stopped a few paces away and stared at Jabari. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the crackle of dry leaves underfoot. Then the lion turned and began to walk away, pausing to glance back as if beckoning. Kofi frowned. "Is it leading us?" Jabari's heart beat fast. "Yes, brother. We must follow." They followed the lion through the forest, deeper and deeper until they reached a hidden valley. There, against all odds, was water, a pool fed by a spring that had not dried. Around it, grass grew green, and animals gathered, antelope, gazelle, even buffalo. Life thrived in this secret place, unseen by other hunters. The brothers stood in awe. The lion looked back at them once more, then turned and walked into the shadows, disappearing like a spirit. Kofi fell to his knees, overcome. By the ancestors. It saved us. It showed us life. Jabari placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. His voice was soft, but steady. "Do you see now, Kofi? Kindness is never wasted. Even when shown to the smallest, it returns in ways we cannot imagine." The brothers hunted there, filling their packs with meat. They drank deeply from the spring and carried water back in gourds. When they returned to the village, their people wept with relief, for the food saved many from hunger. And when the elders asked where they had found such abundance, Kofi told them the truth. From that day, the story of the lion became more than a tale. It became a teaching. Mothers told their children, "Be like Jabari." Show mercy, even when others say it is foolish. Elders told the young men, strength lies not only in the spear, but in the heart that chooses compassion. And whenever the rains failed or the earth grew harsh, people remembered the lion and the mercy that had saved them. But the story did not end there. For the lion itself became a legend. Some hunters claimed they saw it from afar, standing tall on a hill, watching but never attacking. Others swore they heard its roar at night, echoing through the plains, like a guardian spirit of the village. Whether it was flesh or spirit, no one could say. But all agreed, it remembered.